We like a big band. On the show tonight, the leading lady of our musical theatre, Elaine Page, and the man described as one of the great war correspondents, Max Hastings. But first up, a bit of an all-rounder, an actor, comedian, writer, and soon-to-be director. According to Who's Who, he spends his spare time smoking, drinking, swearing, and pressing wild flowers. Asked to account for his popularity, he said, "I feel I'm placed between Alan Bennett and the Queen Mother, a sort of public kitten." Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Fry! Public kitten.
I can't believe I said that.
You did. Certainly the Queen Mother and Alan Bennett. Mind boggles. Let's talk about it seems to me that of the many things you do now, that what you're doing most of all now is making movies. I think you've got 4 movies waiting to be released.
Yes, it's true. I did quite a lot last year, and I love it. I don't know why. It's just the most enjoyable thing in the world. There's no good pretending that my roots are in theatre, which you're supposed to say.
That's right.
If you're an English actor. Theatre and I haven't always seen eye to eye.
No, we've heard the story.
Whereas films, it's just... There's no other word for it, but there's something sexy about a film set.
But did you... I mean, was it an ambition when you were a child to be a movie star? Is that what you imagined you might be? Film star, name above the title?
Well, if I'm deeply honest, I'm afraid, yes. Little part of me. Little part of me. I didn't know I was going to grow up looking like I did. You know, I imagined I would grow up looking like a cross between Matt Damon and Judith Chalmers, perhaps. So I think there's a real room for it.
There is.
And I did bicycle off in Norfolk, where I grew up. They were making a film called The Go-Between, a rather wonderful film. To try and be an extra, and they wouldn't have me. Mm.
What about the movies that are awaiting, then, for release? You made one with Julie Andrews, which is the No Coward play.
That's right. Mm. It's a play he wrote called Relative Values, and this is a film of it. And, I mean, Julie Andrews. I'm sorry, you only have to say Julie Andrews. And you think, ooh. She's a remarkable woman, absolutely sweet, very funny, very good sense of humour, but it's so hard not to stop oneself from going spit spot, or making some joke about the wind when the wind's going to change, or some pathetic do-re-mi thing. And she carries it around with her, and, you know, poor thing, I think she imagines that she's being laughed at, and that I tried to explain to her that, yes, we do find them quite funny, Mary Poppins and the Sound of Music, but they occupy a very deep place within us. We grew up with these things, and they are. And to sit as close as I am to you and think, I know that face. Every bump in its forehead, I know it so well. And it's just... And the whole film crew, they'd been working with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman for Kubrick, and they were going, it's bloody Julie Andrews. I've just shot Julie Andrews. I can't believe it. I've just done Julie Andrews. She carries this remarkable quality.
She's not either, is she? She's not as precious and as goody-goody as...
She breaks wind, Michael, I'm sorry to say.
She does.
She farts like a priest. Unbelievable.
While sitting near to we are together.
Absolutely, yeah. It's quite deliberate. It's quite deliberate.
Well, I was going to say, she actually told a story in an interview I did with her about Rex Harrison breaking wind.
Absolutely, which timed with the lines of My Fair Lady, my reverberating friend.
You, my
he was going... Because, no, he was a legendary farter.
Was he?
Absolutely. Rex Harrison, yeah.
What about the other film that you're doing? You're doing The Duke of Wellington, or playing The Duke of Wellington, aren't you?
Yeah.
Now, what is it? Is this a spoof film? Or
it's a very hard film to describe. It's called Sabotaje, because it's made by Spaniards, and that's their word for sabotage. And I play the Duke of Wellington, and David Suchet plays Napoleon, which is... He's like the Duke of Wellington, only his hat goes that way, and the Duke of Wellington goes that way. So we would occasionally swap hats and fool the entire cast as to who was which. And it was shot in Spain in August, unbelievably hot. And the entire crew, virtually, were Basque. And I don't know if you've ever heard Basque language being spoken, but it is completely unlike any other language, literally unlike any other language. It is the only language in all of Europe that has no roots, as it were. Some people thought it was connected to Finnish, but it isn't. It's not connected to any other. It's just unique. And it has those TXs in. You know, that tennis player, Arantxa, with that TX. Anyway, so you just hear this sound of people going like this. Rather beautiful. And they're very friendly, very sweet, when they're not blowing people up, which at the time, fortunately, they weren't. They were at peace. And they love Wellington because the capital of the Basque Country is Vitoria, where Wellington had a famous victory. So, as is the way with films, you get treated like your character is. Which reminds me, actually, just to delay a perfect example of this. I did a thing once with Nicholas Lyndhurst, you know, that wonderful actor. Yeah. Very thin, you know, he turns sideways, he disappears. But he's a very nice chap. I hate thin people, don't you?
No.
But he and I had finished filming, we were in Harrogate, and we were wandering down the street, and these lads saw us, and they did a rather bad approximation of a Cockney accent, being Yorkshireman, obviously. I go, "Oh, hey, Rodney, you plonker," like this, you know, and punching him, physically punching him, saying, "You plonker, give us your autograph, go on, you twat, go on, give us your autograph." And he's a very shy, decent, grave fellow, Nick Lyndhurst, and so he did it. And then they turned to me and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Fry, could we have your autograph as well?" And as we walked away, Nicholas was saying, "What's that about? I get punched? They call me a twat? And then they say, 'Excuse me, Mr. Fry.' What's that about?" I said, "It's because you play younger brothers. And people treat you as if you're their younger brother.
See, yes.
And I play generals and bishops, and they treat me with the respect." And so he said, "Right, that's it. The next part I'm playing, I'm going to play a bishop." But it is true. And similarly, in Spain, playing the Duke of Wellington, yes, I was treated as if I was slightly the Duke of Wellington, and David was treated as if he was a bit of an upstart who was going to lose, you know, which was just rather, you know, rather pleasing. But unfortunately, I had to ride a horse.
Are you not capable of riding a horse? Were you not before you
Well,
went there?
I like to think it's more the horse's fault than mine. They are, and I know people who love horses will say this is nonsense, but they are unbelievably stupid animals. I'm sure they have terrific instinct and so on, but they are, every day they just go, "Whoa, what's that? Whoa!" You know, it's a hedge. It's a hedge. You saw one yesterday. Whoa! It's a piece of bloody paper. You have 4 tons. You could kill a man. And you go, "Whoa! It's a cigarette. What's the matter with you? It's not even a light." Whoa! You know, that eye-rolling kind of nerves. And then that's them walking out of the horse box onto the field. And then suddenly you've got to sit on them with a sword here, binoculars, 3 capes, huge hat, like, you know, ridiculous hat. If I nodded, I would fall off forwards like that. And then a cannon goes off next to me. And I looked at a rough cut, and I tried to believe that I was looking, but I could see myself going. And I promise you, if you see this film, you will see how absolutely rigid with fear I am. It is the most... Because I'm a tall chap anyway, and I'm sort of right up there.
But which leads us to comedy, of course. I mean, we were talking before you came on about heroes in comedy.
Yes.
And you were particularly fond of and inspired by Peter Cook, weren't you?
Yes. He was uniquely nice to everybody, but it was with his comedy. He didn't save it up. So he could probably say something devastatingly funny when buying a newspaper in the morning, and he wouldn't remember it or repeat it later that day. And, you know, it was...
I always gave me the impression Peter was being bored. He was bored with life, and I don't know whether that was the kind of wellspring of his humour. I mean, if you try to analyse these things, I don't know. But
he did so much so early on that there was very little... There were, you know, few, you know, mountains left for him to conquer towards the end.
Yes.
I mean, when David Frost called him up and said, "Peter, it'd be wonderful if you come to dinner Wednesday week. The Prince Andrew and his bride-to-be, Sarah Ferguson, both enormous fans. It behoves, you know, for you to come. It behoves, roll over, behoven. Please come. It will be so wonderful." And Peter said, "Hang on, I'll just look at my diary." And it sort of sounded rustling over the phone. He said, "What day did you say it was?" "Wednesday week." He said, "Oh dear, I find I'm watching television that night." Just so perfect.
Yeah, I mean, he quite liked David Frost.
He loved him. In fact, it's hard not to like David Frost, to be honest. I mean, he's a very likeable fellow because he likes everybody else, David.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing of Peter, of course, was his laser-like satirical ability because he... I mean, of course, his influence on satire was enormous because of, I mean, owning Private Eye, of course, was obviously an extraordinary thing. But I remember once people were talking about, you know how Elizabeth Taylor occasionally used to go up and down, rather embarrassing, like a sort of balloon. She'd be completely round, and then 2 weeks later she'd be all slim again. I know the feeling myself, but at the time someone was saying, "Well, actually, it's her glands or whatever," and Peter said, "Yes, Paul, but it's her glands. She'll be sitting in her suite on the park, for example, calmly watching television, and her glands will pick up the telephone and order a cart of eclairs and 2 bottles of Courvoisier. And they'll arrive and she'll go, no, but her glands will stuff them down her throat, stuff them down. And it was just, whoa. You wouldn't want to get the wrong side of it.
No, those surreal flights of fantasy were quite unique, weren't they? And he did change things, didn't he? I mean, it's argued that comedy changed nothing, but he did change something. He opened the floodgates for all you lot to come pouring through.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he really was the godfather.
The other strange thing, too, is I very early on in this other manifestation, the 70s, we got the Beyond the Fringe team together.
Oh, yeah.
And it was extraordinary to sit and watch these 4 disparate characters. I mean, what on earth did Alan Bennett have in common with Peter, you know?
I know, it's extraordinary. I mean, that's, I suppose, partly what made it work so well. I mean, Alan Bennett, it's funny, I'd not remember that I'd said I was between him and the Queen Mother, but there is he is someone it's very hard not to feel deep affection for, and he, as you may know, being a Yorkshireman yourself, he closely associated with an area very near to where the late Russell Harty also used to live, in Giggleswick. And it was a rather charming story, and I just love to picture these two, Alan Bennett and Russell Harty, in a car driving up to Yorkshire, and Alan Bennett saying, shall we play a game to beguile the hours? And Russell Harty said, what about Botticelli? And I said, no, that's too competitive. He said, I know, we have to think of the person whose underpants we would least like to have to wear on our heads. And Russell Harty said, Colin Welland. And Alan Bennett said, well, that's not fair, you've won already. Which... it's such a bizarre...
Wonderful story. Now, you're now moving it from appearing in movies to directing movies. You're going to direct Val Bodies, aren't you?
That's right, yeah. I wrote an adaptation. They asked me if I could direct it.
Right. So now you're moving in with the big boys. The money men.
Well, yes. I mean, you wouldn't think there was a story that reflected any credit, perhaps you might not, on Rupert Murdoch. But I heard a story where... I don't know if you know of a fellow called William Rees-Mogg, who used to be editor of The Times. Absolutely. And he has a slight lisp like that, but I'm not going to do that because it's hopeless. But he's capable of being a little pompous, William Rees-Mogg, should we say. And at this dinner party, he was saying, you know, I've met 4 presidents of the United States, 5 British prime ministers, 3 presidents of the Republic of France, 3 chairmen of the Communist Party, leaders of the Soviet Union in Russia. And, you know, not one of them impressed me as having a first-class mind. And Rupert Murdoch leant across and said, did it ever occur to you, William, that they probably thought you were a bit of a dick, too? Well, you know, it's much harder to dislike him after that, isn't it? Really.
OK, so when will this opus be finished, then, the Val Bodies?
Well, we hope to start shooting in a few months, so it probably won't be out till next year, given the way things are.
Good. Well, thank you very much indeed for talking to me. Stephen Fry.